Hello everyone and welcome back to One Soccer. I'm your host for today, Josh Deming. Now at the time of recording, FIFA 23 just dropped their web app, and with it we get to find out the overalls for our Canadian players. I'm very curious to see if EA did them justice or not. I've only taken a look at two players so far, that's Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David, because they were already released. I'm going to get into a lot of the other Canadian players, so hopefully you guys are excited, and if you are, as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and let's get into the episode now. We are going to start things off with Alphonso Davies. Now, taking a look at his card right away, we'll start with the overall 84. I guess he didn't have the best season last year with Bayern. I still think it's a little unfair given that he is one of, if not the best left backs in the world.
Come on, man!
I'd probably at least give him an 85 or 86, so a little low for me. And I don't even know where to begin with the pace. I mean, the amount of records he's broken. He's one of the fastest players in the world. He's up there with the likes of Mbappe. 94, again, it doesn't do him justice. I probably would have went with a 95, 96. His shooting, I mean, he scores a lot for Canada, but he hasn't really been on that goal-scoring streak for Bayern. So, I mean, 66 is kind of fair. I probably would have put a little bit closer to 70. Passing, I would have put closer to 80. He's a very good passer, very underrated attribute of Davies' game. You've seen it a lot for Canada, the way he can pick out a pass. He can do it as well for, I mean, Bayern, and the amount of goals he can lead from the wing is just absolutely incredible. I feel like that's a little too low. I probably would have looked at like a 82-ish. Dribbling 85 is fair. Probably would even give it a little bit higher because, you know, why not while we're at it. And then the defense and physicals are pretty fair. I think high 70s are pretty decent. I mean, his defensive attributes are a little bit overshadowed by his ability going forward, but we know what Davies can do on the back end, and I'd say, honestly, it's physicals and defending closer to the 78. Overall, I mean, it's a fair card for Davies, but just knowing that he is one of the best at his position, and 84 to me seems a little bit too low. I think boosting up those other stats and getting him closer to that 86 would have been a little bit more fair from EA. The next player up is Jonathan David, and like Davies, I already saw his card before today. Every other card from here on out, I haven't seen yet. Anything, not for even overalls or anything. I'm going in blindly. I have seen David's card. I kept my mouth shut because it is just not fair. I mean, starting off, he scored 15 goals in a top 5 league in Liga last season. He already won the Liga title with a couple seasons ago with an incredibly, I guess, overachieving Leo side, and he was a big part of that, scoring 13 goals, and you're giving him a 79. That's just cruel. I think bare minimum, David should be around an 82, 83 card. Scoring those type of goals, his transfer market value is incredible. It just baffles me that they're going to put him at a 79. But skipping on from that, his pace is an 83. I think he's a little bit faster than that. I'd go a little bit more towards the 85, 86. His shooting at 79 is fair. Again, you can maybe up at 1 or 2, maybe 80, 81. His passing is decent. I think he's a very good and underrated passer as well. I would have probably put that a little bit higher up towards the 75, 76. Dribbling's pretty good. I'm going to boost probably everyone because I think that EA is going to really underrate our Canadians. So don't think that me boosting everything in one is just me saying it. I just think clearly they're a little bit underrated. His dribbling's decent. Again, if I was going to boost it by a couple, I think the physicals are relatively fair around 71. So overall, like, the biggest thing that bugs me about this card is probably simply the overall. I think when you put up those type of numbers in a top 5 league like that, Jonathan David, bare minimum, should have been at least an 82, 83. And then all of his stats, I think, could have been juiced up a little bit. Specifically, I really think that pace is kind of a little unfair. I mean, he's a striker. He's a quick striker. I just watched a lot of his goals that he scored throughout World Cup qualifying for Canada, and the way he's able to get free, use his pace. I mean, my man got ripped off there. Come on, EA. All right, coming in at number 30 on the list, and the first player I haven't seen before right now is Stefan Eustaquio. I think that is fair that he's third. I mean, that's probably how it should be. Overall, starting at a 76, I mean, knowing EA, that's not a surprise. He's done incredible things for Canada. He did really well for Passos de Ferreira, but I mean, again, he probably wouldn't have got looked at that type of level before moving to Porto. He didn't play a lot for Porto last season before now finally breaking through. So, I mean, honestly, I think a high 70s would have been fair. Probably like 78, 79 for me. But 76 isn't really surprising. The pace, I think it's a little unfair. I think Eustaquio is actually a pretty quick player. 66 is a little too low. I probably would put it at that 73, 74 mark. His shooting is a very good shooter. He can strike a ball very well. Set piece specialist. I think that's, again, should be in the 70s. His passing, again, maybe I got the bias of being Canadian, but I mean, again, high 70s for passing. His dribblings and defense and physicals, all in my opinion, are okay. Probably around the mid 70s I would have done, because I get to watch him a lot. I think that this card is expected for EA. Again, given that they're going off of what he kind of did last season, and the tail end of the season wasn't overly impressive when he moved to Porto because he didn't play. So overall, decent from EA. I think the pace and the shooting is the biggest thing. It was like, you know, that's off. He's 70s accurate, can strike a ball, that's for sure. But regardless, I mean, just the face values of these overalls, this one's okay by EA. Number 4 on the list is Jonathan Azorio, and I don't know if that surprises me or not, but we're already out of the gold cards, guys. Took 3 gold cards for the Canadian players. Kind of hurts a little bit, but Azorio, he's gonna give you a silver card, 74 overall. Again, I mean, I think that's probably relatively fair for Azorio, given how TFC have been. 75, maybe 76. You could argue around there. His pace is pretty slow. His shooting is pretty below average. If I'm being honest, EA is doing Azorio a little dirty there. Passing, dribbling, defense, and physicals. I mean, I'd probably boost them up a little bit. Specifically looking at Azorio's passing and dribbling, I think it's a little bit unfair. His pace is down there as well. Not overly surprising from EA, but again, I think Azorio was a little hard done by there. Rounding out our top 5 is Maxime Crépeau. This one's a little surprising for me. I kind of thought Crépeau might have been a little bit higher. He's one of the best keepers in Major League Soccer. He's just been in spectacular form as well. 74 overall. Again, I probably like Azorio would have bumped up a little bit. Diving, handling, kicking, reflexes, speed, positioning. If one of them is going to come out, I mean, speed, the keeper speed's always weird in this game. I don't think Crépeau's an overly quick one. His kicking's pretty decent. I'd probably put his reflexes up a little bit. I think his reflexes should be in the 80s. Overall, it's probably a fair card, fair overall, but again, coming from the Canadian, I would have bumped up just a little bit. Next up is Kyle Larin, and he had a bit of an off season with Besiktas. Got his move to Club Bruges, but he lost some of his overall. He slipped into the silver card range, another 74 as well. This one is interesting. I mean, I think it's a little unfair considering he still put up decent numbers in the amount he featured for Besiktas. Was it a good season for him? Absolutely not, but you also kind of take into consideration what he was doing for Canada at the same time he was doing it for Besiktas. I don't think he really deserved a drop like that. I probably would have kept Larin still around the 76, 77 type of overall. His pace and shooting a little bit low. His passing's probably fair. Dribbling's probably fair. Physicals are decent. So, I mean, with the Larin, I just think the drop's a little unnecessary. It wasn't a disastrous season. It wasn't a great one coming off of what he just did. But he also had crazy numbers for Canada to balance it out. Highlighting, passing, and shooting a little bit low, but probably another one that's not very fair from Larin. However, his start to this season might have justified this overall, so, you know. Finally, an overall change. We're out of the 74s, and we slipped down to 72, where we find Ike Ugwu. Again, a player at the tail end of the season that went to a top 5 league, scored 5 goals in 14 appearances. Looked really good for a hard-to-watch Troyes side. He's got a 72 overall, pace 76, shooting 70, passing 57, dribbling 69, defending 29, physical 69. I mean, I would have probably put him closer to that gold card range given that he's doing it in a top 5 league. Maybe it wasn't enough evidence there for him. He didn't overly shine for Canada but on any stretch. He hasn't had a ton of opportunities, but probably would have given him at least a 74 to 75. Pace is decent. Shooting, I think he's a great finisher. I would have probably put that one up a little bit. And probably the dribbling looks a little bit low. He is good in tight spaces. A little bit surprising again just because of the top 5 league, but probably a little unfair on Ugbo's part. Atiba. I mean, this is expected. I'm impressed that his pace isn't in the 30s like Axel Witsel. When you hit a certain age in FIFA, they basically think that you can't even walk anymore. It's absolutely ridiculous. Atiba, almost 40 years old, somehow keeps a 52 pace. I think that's fair. There's no surprise he was going to drop. He's getting up there in age. Last season, for many players on Besiktas, including Kyle Larin, didn't go his way. 72 overall, maybe a little bit unfair, but it's probably falls into the category of what EA look to do with players like this. The pace, like I mentioned, I mean, I'm surprised they didn't drop it down to like 30. This is what they do, even though Hutchinson is in incredible form the way he keeps his body. So, you know, it's decent just because it's EA. Shooting 65 is probably fair. His passing, I think, should be a little bit higher, probably the higher 70s. His defending and physicals could be a little bit higher as well, to mid 70s. Overall, it's an expected card from EA. I don't think it's overly unfair, but hopefully Hutch can get back and justify, you know, that boost. You know, the 40th birthday surprise, get him an inform card. Another player in the 72s is Richie Laret. Went over to England with Nottingham Forest, went back to TFC. It's a decent card if you're gonna rock a silver squad. I mean, he's got a 72 overall, 83 pace. Little unfair. Shooting 60, passing 64, dribbling 71, defending 64, and physicals. Again, I think the pace could probably boost it up a little bit, as well as the passing. Richie Laret is a very good passer of the ball, low 60s, but I mean, EA likes to take a look at where the player's playing. He's in the MLS, didn't really work in Europe. You know, they'll probably do that, but if it was up to me, I'd up that pace, I'd up the passing, and I think the dribbling, defending, and physicals could all be relatively even in the mid 70s. Overall, again, most of these are expected from EA. I don't have high expectations, but I do think it's a little bit unfair. I think Richie Laret should be closer to that 75. He got the attention, he moved to Europe. Didn't quite work, but it's okay, I guess. 72 seems to be the theme here. Now, I don't know if I'm just being unrealistic and thinking this is totally unfair, but I mean, Buchanan, in my opinion, should be up there with Stefan Eustaquio. This is a player who did it at Major League Soccer. He's done it with the Canadian national team. He got his move to Club Brugge. He's starting there. He's playing well. I think he should be a gold card, like 75, 76, around there. Maybe push Steph up to 78. Like, for me, Buchanan is way too low. I think the pace at 92 is very fair. He's quick. We know that. The shooting, he's a good finisher as well. He's not a great one, don't get me wrong. I mean, Buchanan can put chances away, but he struggled a little bit at Bruges doing that. But I still think low 70s. His passing, a little bit higher than a 60. His dribbling's very good, and his physicals are decent as well. Buchanan's a strong boy. I'd probably put his physicals towards the 70 mark, dribbling towards the 80 mark, his shooting up in the 70s, and probably would have given him a gold card, 75, 76. So, in my opinion, now I love everything about Tajan Buchanan, but Buchanan, if you're watching this, man, EA got you good. They got you good. The next player on our list is Marc-Anthony Kaye, coming in with a 71 overall. Immediately, I think this is a little unfair. He was a part of that Rapid side that really surprised a lot of teams, and he's kept decent form ever since he went to TFC. Yes, his form hasn't been great, but regardless, I think he should be a little bit closer to that gold card, around maybe a 74, something like that. His pace is okay. His shooting would go up, in my opinion. Passing as well, dribbling, defense, physicals are all okay as well. I think he's a little hard done by. I mean, that's going to be the theme with me. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think this card should be a little bit up. And looking at that passing stat, I mean, looking at K, and it hurts a little bit, I'm being honest. Next up is Big Bad Lucas Cavallini, coming in with a 71 overall. I'm okay with this. I haven't been overly impressed with Cavallini with the Whitecaps. I know that this current season he's been better, but he still has his inconsistencies about him. You could argue if you wanted to go up a little bit, but I honestly say this card's pretty fair. I don't think he even really deserves 72 pace. I don't personally think Cavallini's all that fast of a player, so I think that's overly fair. His shooting, I think he's a good finisher. You can maybe argue that could go up a little bit. I think he's a better passer than 50. His dribbling's probably fair, defending's probably fair, and physicals, a high 86 is decent as well. I think this is, from what EA looking at a player like this, is probably realistic. I think it's relatively fair. I would argue, I don't think his pace is probably that high, but I think his shooting should be better. Maybe his dribbling and his passing as well. Overall, for me, this is probably the first relatively fair card I'm looking at. We have another 71 overall in our hands, and that is Dane St. Clair. Now, St. Clair this season with Minnesota United has done a lot to justify being closer to a gold card, closer to Maxime Crépeau. Now, again, given that he didn't have a ton of starts the prior season, this season he's completely taken his game to another level. Taking all that in consideration, obviously this is probably a little bit unfair right now, but when EA was doing it, I guess you could argue it, but if we're going off of right now current form, I mean, Dane St. Clair has to be at a very similar level as Maxime Crépeau, very close to a gold card, around that 75-ish. I mean, his reflexes are incredible, his handling, diving, I would put just about everything up in this category as well. St. Clair has just been nothing but spectacular for a very underrated Minnesota United side this year. My boy Junior Hoilett is still doing it at the championship level. And when I was a kid and played a lot of FIFA video games and played specifically career mode, Hoilett was my guy. He was the only one who was Canadian who had a decent overall, so he played for me in a lot of different clubs. Napoli, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, Chelsea. He was my guy. Still nice to see him having an okay overall, 70 left mid, 80 pace, which is probably pretty fair for Hoilett still. 69 shooting, I'm a little iffy with. If you've seen some of Junior Hoilett's goals, you know that should be. He's a very good finisher. Passing's a little bit low for me. Dribbling's a little bit low. Physicals are probably fair. I mean, Reading had a disastrous campaign last season. You can't get around that. Junior Hoilett has been much better this season. Reading has been far, far better than they were. I'd probably argue you could boost him up to around like that 73-ish. I think his pace is fair. Shooting can go up a little bit. The other ones are decent. It's an okay card. It's an expected card for an aging player. But again, a lot of good memories for me with Junior Hoilett. Oh, Samuel Piette, my man, getting done dirty. 53 pace. Can't just skip right over the overall to that one. I mean, Piette has shined this season like no other. I've been so impressed with him. I think he'll be a big part of this Canadian side going forward, part of the leadership group. 70 overall. I mean, if we're going off the form he's in now, it's got to be higher. His pace is ridiculous. 53 pace. Piette is not a slow guy by any stretch. Doesn't think that he can kick a ball either. Gave him a 35 shooting overall. But for me, when you're a center defensive midfielder, the way that Piette is, so calm on the ball, great passer. 53 pace, 56 passing, 61 dribbling, and then 70 defense, 79 physicals. I mean, I put the overall up a little bit, and then if you want to do him wrong with the pace, okay. The passing for a CDM with a 56 is just unacceptable. It's unacceptable. His passing, in my opinion, should be towards the 70s, and his pace can be anywhere in the low 60s. So Samuel Piette, man, I mean, if it's up to me, this is just unacceptable, and I'd have you up there quite a bit. The next player on the list is Samuel Kone, and similar to Piette, my man got ripped off. Hattispor had a fantastic season last campaign, and Samuel Kone is one of the most consistent and best left backs in the league. I would have thought that would have been a high silver, sort of around that gold one. I mean, at least a 73, 74 for Kone, but no, they gave him a 70. I think his pace at 86 is fair. Shooting with left backs, you know, I think it would be a little bit higher. I think his passing deserves to be a little bit higher. He's a very good dribbler. I mean, this was surprising. We saw it, us Canadian men's national team fans saw it, so probably EA doesn't watch a lot of the Canadian national team, but if you see the dribbling on Kone and what he can do in tight spaces, it's incredible. His defending is really good as well, and his physicals are decent. I mean, I'd grab the dribbling, the defending, and the shooting. I mean, the 50 is very low, but I would raise it up all pretty much a little bit and give him that 73, 74. But Kone, another one that hits the disrespect from EA. So, sorry, my guy. Disrespect is the word for the day from EA. Now, Kamal Miller at a 70 just hurts. What this guy has done over the past 18 months is nothing short of spectacular. Taking that huge step in his career with the national team, part of one of the best teams in Major League Soccer right now. Even comparing to a player like Aaron Long, whose cards usually get around that gold 75. I mean, Kamal Miller needs to be up there. I'm not being unrealistic with the 74 to 75 overall, but 70 is just too low for him. Now, they gave him 80 pace, which is fantastic. They gave him very poor passing. Now, I think Kamal Miller's passing could be in the mid-60s. Dribbling a little bit higher as well. The defending has to be up there, and his physical is very strong guy. I'd probably have a low 80s in physical, like 82, 75 defending, and get him towards that 73, 74. I mean, there's very few players so far who've really gotten a overall that I haven't been upset about. The next low overall on the list is Alistair Johnson, similar to Kamal Miller. Everything I just said about Kamal Miller can kind of get put onto Alistair Johnson. 74, 75-ish overall. They gave him a right mid. I would have given him a right back. If anything, right wing back. He does not play right mid. I think probably the fair one would have been just a right back. I know that's not what Montreal technically plays, but you know, you can justify a right back, outside of a right center back, right back, and kind of jump up to the wing back. If anything, it's a wing back. They gave him a right mid, so that's just purely wrong. 79 pace is okay. Shooting, you know, it's unfair, but it's expected. And give him the right mid, but give him 51 shooting. Passing's a little bit too low for me. Defending and dribbling a little bit too low. It's not the most physical out there, but it could be a little bit higher. Just Alistair Johnson, just a very underrated player. A little bit unfair for the same reasons as Kamal Miller. Dropping out of the 70s now, we go down to a 69 overall, Steven Vittoria with Chavez. Now, similar to Cavallini, there's not really a lot of complaints for me. Now, I rate this player higher than a 69 overall, but he had a very poor season last year. His side got relegated. He wasn't even making it into the starting 11. He had a great start right now with Chavez. It's probably fair that he got downgraded. His pace, just painful, but that's why I was so surprised that Atiba's pace was higher. Older players with EA and pace, they just absolutely cut it in half. 34 pace, he's not fast. I mean, I don't know what I would give Vittoria. I think it's maybe towards the 50s, but I mean, again, this isn't surprising. Physicals, I think, can go up. Dribbling as well, passing. I mean, it's a little bit of, because I know the player, I know what we're going to get, but in terms of EA, very similar to Cavallini, this is a fair card. It's time for a little more Joel Waterman love. I got the CPL hat on. He just got called up to the Canadian national team. Everything about Joel Waterman makes me happy, except for this FIFA card. Now, yes, he's broken out this current season. He did decent last year. 67, a little too low. If I was going off of realistic expectations, I mean, I would like him towards that 72, 73. 44 pace for Joel Waterman is not fair. He can play anywhere across even a back 3, back 4 in terms of center back positions. He is much quicker than a 44, much quicker. I'd say at least in the 60s. It's not unrealistic for Waterman. His passing's better, his dribbling's better, defending and physical's up a little bit. Joel Waterman, I wouldn't disrespect you like that. This is the pace just hurts. Definitely a faster player than that, and I think he will prove it in this upcoming window. The final player we are going to analyze is Ismail Kone. Now, obviously, he had a massive rise last season, and continuing on this season, wasn't a big rise really for EA. I mean, they still gave him a bronze card, 64 overall, 78 pace is pretty fair. Shooting at 56, I mean, obviously, I think it should be a little bit higher. Passing at 58, I think, is a very underrated attribute of Kone. I think he's a good passer on the ball. Dribbling at 67 is a little bit low. Defending and physicals both a little bit low. I mean, this card obviously isn't fair. He's a very young player who's been playing a lot better than this. He's attracted the likes of Norwich City, Sheffield United. Ismail Kone, I think, again, will continue on to develop, get better. This overall will be up there, especially when he moves to somewhere in the championship. That will get EA's attention. But for right now, unfairly, my man's a bronze. Alright everyone, that is all the time we have for on this episode. Let me know down in the comments below if you agree with EA or if you agree with me. I know it's a little biased, but I really think our Canadians were a little unfairly judged. But regardless, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub as well. We're trying to get close to 100,000 subscribers, so if you want to help us get there, dropping a sub will do that. Also, be sure to subscribe to One Soccer for all the best Canadian soccer coverage. My name is Josh Deming. Thank you all for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers, friends.